movie, What Dreams May Come. Beautiful movie, by the way. It made me tear up. Is it possible to reincarnate and end up with a karma because there is unfinished business in the past life, similar to the movie, and once the lesson is learned, the relationship ends? I believe so. I don't have a definitive answer on that, but yes, we all come into this life with karma. Not a good or a bad thing, just a thing. It's a perspective called equanimity. It's not about judging it good or bad or better or worse. It just is what it is. And based on what you do in the past, you come here with that karma in this present life of your present experience as a human being to rectify that. And once you rectify that, you clean that slate and you move on to the next thing until you fulfill that cycle completely, and then you no longer come back here as a human being, but you go other places to fulfill other things. Generally, that's when we speak about the realms of angels. So you come back as the form of an angel in some cases to come and help. Although it's not necessarily a physical human being, it's an energy that is here to help from the other side. Let's go to Michael Seriak. Question. The most heinous acts come from deep, unhealed wounds of rejection. Can acting unconsciously from this wound really end you up in a place like Kafakela where there is no coming out? It's not just about heinous acts. I had that clarified this morning as well, because there are individuals who commit heinous acts and they don't end up there. Hitler is a perfect example. Because in the eyes of those laws, Hitler came here with a contract to do something for the purposes of awakening the masses through tragedy. And that's exactly what it did. Through that experience, was Hitler a bad guy? Yes. Was he a problem? Yes. But he was a reflection of the collective consciousness at the time that, in my opinion, is still very much alive. So in that case, that's a heinous act that doesn't bring you there. In other cases, there are some individuals who commit suicide that will end up in Kafakela. So I don't know all the nuances, and I don't know if we'll ever know all the nuances of what that means and how it truly works, because it's not a linear thing. It's connected to many different things happening through many different lifetimes. And it's not just a matter of what happens when it comes to the physical experience of the human being, but also what happens on the level of the soul. So I wish there was a black and white answer to that. Unfortunately, there isn't, but that is the beauty of the spirit world. Kaya Bell. Hello, Kaya. So question from Kaya. How long does someone have to be in a coma to qualify for Ray's description? Okay, so I asked that as well. What are the nuances of comas? Medically induced comas do not bring you to a place of Kafakela or the land of darkness. That is not by any means true. I want to make that clear. That means that if you, for example, these are the exact questions I had because I asked all the nuances and scenarios. What happens if you overdose on drugs, you end up in a coma, but it was a medically induced coma to get you through something? That is not considered the coma that he was talking about in that episode. However, if you have a drug overdose and you end up in a natural coma, that is considered what he was talking about throughout the episode. Now, forget about that because that's something you do to yourself. Let's go somewhere even more crazy and it's something that's harder to comprehend. What happens if somebody, a stranger, a criminal, came, hit you over the head from behind in the middle of the night? You're just a mother with kids, you're a single mother doing her best to support her children, right? The most innocent person that there is. And you get hit over the head, you end up in a coma, not a medically induced coma, but a coma. That will bring you to a place like the land of darkness or Kafakela. Now, the rational person will say, what did that mother do to deserve something like that? And what we seem to forget is that that mother is not a bad person in this life. It's not about that. It's what happened before and what was needed to rectify the situation. So it's not only about what happened in this life, because there are many good people that end up in comas. It doesn't mean you're a bad person if you end up in a coma. But that doesn't negate what happened in the past and what you might have done in the past. And it's not a matter of punishment. It's just a matter of consequence based on what was done to rebalance the energy. So take the idea of undesired outcomes or the word bad or the word punishment out of your vocabulary when thinking about things like this. It's much simpler than that when you understand the world of singularity. Alrighty? So again, If it is a medically induced coma, no matter how you got there, you do not qualify in that world of what Ray was talking about in the episode of The Land of Darkness. But if, no matter what happened, you went into a coma without being medically induced in that coma, then you do qualify for something like that, whether it's a day, a year, 10 years, or anything in between. So just keep that in mind. Let's keep going. That's an interesting question I don't know the answer to, from Nick D. Who is in control or in charge of the Land of Darkness? What entity? What race? None of the above. God, the divine source, is in control of everything that is. And there is no punishment, and that entity, that energy, that is all, is not separate from anything within all. Now we're getting a little philosophical, but it's not about a race that's in charge of something like that. It's an autonomous, energetic machine that works itself through what happens and what needs to be done to rebalance and rectify that thing. Almost like, who is in charge of, if I cut myself on my arm by accident, that would be like asking what entity or what race is in charge of making that thing scab up and close. No entity and no race. It just is the divine intelligence of the world that operates in that way to bring balance back into the world. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. Renee B. asks, is the Land of Darkness just for people that commit suicide? No. The focus was on suicide because that's one of the ways. There are other ways that you can end up there as well, but no. It generally has to do with things that you did that brought you out of balance, and the purpose of that place is to purify the soul, to bring you back into balance. The next level up beyond the Land of Darkness is what they call Kafakela, and you can read about this as well. It's in many mystical books explained for the past thousands of years. Many people have different understandings of what that is, so take or leave whatever resonates and leave whatever doesn't. But when it comes to that, no. Committing suicide is just one way. There are many ways to end up in a place like the Land of Darkness. But again, although Ray described it as a bad place, don't think about it as good or bad. Think about it as just a consequence of an action. For example, if you take your hand and put it in fire, it will burn you. It's not bad or a punishment that it burns you. It's how things work. It's the laws of physics. It's simply how things work. That's how we need to think about all of this as well. It's not about punishment or good or bad. It's just how things work. And when we understand it from that perspective, things change as well. Nathaniel Erickson Ramos. If God is love, why does he rule by fear from the threat of deletion in Kafakela? Again, goes back to what we just said. So, Nathaniel, that question is a very logical question, right? It's a question based on what we understand as judgment. And we take the deletion or the destruction of the soul as we know it as a negative thing. And it's not about good or bad. It's just the equivalent of if you put your hand in fire, your hand will burn. It's the same idea, only now in a different realm. So, God is only love. And all of this operates from love with no judgment whatsoever. But that doesn't mean that God is a fearing God or a God that wants to rule by fear if we know that when you jump off a building, you're going to die. It's not a thing to rule by fear, if that makes sense. It's just how things work because on this planet, we have something called gravity. Gravity is not an evil thing, but it will cause you to die if you jump off of a building. So I'm trying to make everything with no judgment so we understand it from the source and not from the perspective of human judgment, which is totally rational. Let's go to Barry Jenkins. Hello, Barry. He asks, says, a lady I'm caregiving was in a terrible accident. She was brought back to life and in an induced coma for 2 weeks. Does that mean she has a different soul now? I'm a bit confused. If she was in a medically induced coma, no. If she went into a coma naturally without it being medically induced, yes. That's the most black and white answer I can give on that one. But again, either way, it is not a punishment. It is the way that things needed to go based on that woman's soul and all of that soul's experiences throughout its entirety of its experience and its existence. And by the way, if a soul can be created, a soul can be destroyed. Energy at its base cannot be created or destroyed, because energy was never created, and therefore energy can never be destroyed. But a soul is still a form of energy, and a form can always be transformed to something else. A soul is not the base of all energy. A soul is still a signature or a form of the base that we call energy. And for that reason, it could be destroyed. Although the energy is not destroyed, it's just transformed into something else. Let's go to Nadine Brown Taylor. Was the enslavement of Africans similar to the Holocaust as far as awakening? I have no